Okay, I think I can start, right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes. All right, thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna devotees. Today we are going to read from Canto 3, Chapter 25, The Glories of Devotional Service, and the verse number 8. We'll do the usual reading the verse, translation, purport, and have some discussion. The verse is Tasya tvam tamaso andasya dushparasyadyparagam Shachakshurjanmanamante labdam me tvad anugrahat tasya tvam tamasondasya dusparasyadyaparagam Shachakshurjanmanamante labdam me tvad anugrahat. Word to word. Tasya, that. Tvam, you. Tamasaha, ignorance. Andasya, darkness. Dusparasya, difficult to cross. Adya, now. Paragam, crossing over. Sat, transcendental. Chaksuhu, I. Janmanam, of births. Ante, at the end. Labdam, attained. Me, my. Tvat anugrahat, by your mercy. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Your Lordship is my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance, because you are my transcendental eye, which by your mercy only I have attained after many, many births. Purport. This verse is very instructive, since it indicates the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple. The disciple or conditioned soul is put into this darkest region of ignorance and therefore is entangled in the material existence of sense gratification. It is very difficult to get out of this entanglement and attain freedom. But if one is fortunate enough to get the association of a spiritual master like Kapila Muni or his representative, then by his grace, one can be delivered from the mire of ignorance. The spiritual master is therefore worshipped as one who delivers the disciple from the mire of ignorance with the light of the torch of knowledge. The word paragam is very significant. Paragam refers to one who can take the disciple to the other side. This side is conditioned life, the other side is the life of freedom. The spiritual master takes the disciple to the other side by opening his eyes with knowledge. We are suffering simply because of ignorance. By the instruction of the spiritual master, the darkness of ignorance is removed, and thus the disciple is enabled to go to the side of freedom. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that after many, many births, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, if after many, many births, one is able to find a bona fide spiritual master and surrender to such a bona fide representative of Krishna, one can be taken to the side of light. I'll start my Mangalacharan prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Padakalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Devotees, we are doing Canto 325, verse number 8. And we'll start having some discussion. So this chapter talks about the glories of devotional service. This is right after Kardama Muni renunciates. That means he left his wife and son, Kapila Muni. And the first few verses is a conversation between Shaunaka Rishi asking question to Sutta Goswami to describe what was Devahuti talking to his son. And then he starts describing the Devahuti's inquiry in the previous verse. She starts off right away saying that she is very sick of the disturbance caused by material senses. And that is because of her ignorance. And in this verse, she mentions that your lordship or Kapila Muni here he's her only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance. And she says, because you are my transcendental I, which by your mercy only I've attained after many, many births. So this verse mostly resonates with our Guru Pranam mantra. I just want to repeat the meaning of what we usually pray. Almost every day we at least come across this hearing or praying this mantra to our Guru. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we are addressing to our spiritual master that Om Ajnanatimirandasya. Ajnana is ignorance. Timirandasya is to be blinded by the darkness of this ignorance. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. So what is the spiritual master doing? He's taking this instrument, Shalaka, and is applying this ointment of spiritual knowledge, or it is also translated as the torch of knowledge. So he's applying this ointment to our eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of material ignorance. Chakshur Unmilitam. So that means he's opening our eyes with this. So to that spiritual master, Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I am offering my respectful obeisances. So here in this verse, she's pretty much doing the same. It's even though Kapila Muni is her son, but in this context, he has taken the position of the spiritual master, and she is his disciple. And in this verse, it's the same. She's talking about, you are my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance. And what is her ignorance? It was stated in our previous verse. That ignorance or the disturbance caused by her material senses, sense gratification. And we read previous chapters, what she is actually talking about when she meant these material senses, especially after her husband left. And Prabhupada in that purport, he mentions the sense gratification is whatever the temporary sensory activities. And the opposite of it is devotional service, which is eternal sensory activities. So whatever the actions we take that involve our senses, this is to be considered as sense gratification. Of course, we also take actions with the same senses, and we call it devotional service. So it depends on who is at the center. So if it is I am at the center, then it is purely sense gratification, versus if it is Guru or Krishna is at the center, then it will be devotional service. So in this purport, Prabhupada states that this verse is very instructive. Instructive in the sense it describes the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple. That's what the context is also the same. That's how she was inquiring, just like how Arjuna inquires Krishna, and he taken the position of disciple. Similarly, here she's taking the position of disciple. So the relationship between the spiritual master and disciple is very important to understand. Like what to understand, who is spiritual master, who is guru means, what is the position of a disciple, how to behave, what to inquire, and not just that. So I was hearing from Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj in his previous lecture. He brought up this very essential verses of Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 1. It's talks about the revelation of Vyasadeva. There are 4 essential verses. It talks about the essence of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam as per Vyasadeva's revelation. So he very easily puts this essence in a way very easy to understand. He have this triangle. So on the top there is Ishvara. On the right hand corner, one end of the triangle is Prakriti, material nature, and the other end of it is Jiva, which is as living entities. So Ishvara, Prakriti, and living entity. And the relationship between each is also been described. So Ishvara and Prakriti, the relationship, or the what controls what, like the Kala feature, the time feature of the Lord controls the Prakriti. And between Prakriti and Jiva, which is us, it is the karma which is bonding. We are doing some actions in this material world, and that is bonding us, or we are under the modes of the material nature, Prakriti. And then there is a relationship between us and the Ishvara also, which is the way to release ourselves from this material entanglement, which is controlled by material modes. That is yoga. He describes as bhakti yoga. So once we understand this relationship, then we can easily get out of this entanglement. That's what he mentions. So even this essence, even on a very preliminary level, we don't need to go read and understand every verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Maharaj explains that this, as long as you understand this essence, this in very preliminary level, then we can take any situation in our life and apply these principles, and you can get out of that situation. So I really loved when I heard that. He made it so simplified, the entire essence. So Devahuti stated in the previous verse what is the cause of her ignorance, which is her sense gratification. And in the later verses, especially I think the verse number 20, I came across this verse when I heard from the recently concluded seminar or workshop from Nityananda Prabhu and Himangi Mataji. They brought up this verse, which really connected to my heart. So the verse is on 325:20. I can just quickly read the first paragraph of it. So this talks about how we can get released of our attachments, or you can put it sense gratification or anything of this material attachments. Here, it is clearly stated that attachment for one thing is the cause of bondage in conditioned life, and the same attachment when applied to something else opens the door of liberation. So what Prabhupada is talking about, or the verse is talking about is, or even Nityananda Prabhu is stating is, so we have this attachment for this material things, anything that we can talk about. And we are holding it so tightly in the grip. And if someone comes to try to take away from us, whether it is families or money or anything, that attachment, the grip grows even more stronger. We try to grab it even more stronger. So we don't. So the verse, this verse that or Kapila Muni talks or tells Devahuti is, so you don't need to release it. So you know what, you can still hold on to something, but that something now you shift it from this particular attachment to Guru. So once you do that, or once to the sadhu or guru or his instructions, so when you the grip is still there, but you orient the change of orientation. Once you change that direction towards guru, then that's how you can get released from this material entanglement. So it's a change in orientation. So that is how we can actually get released of this attachment, and we will get that. I'm sure someone will speak about that later in that verse. So we spoke about the relationship and what Prabhupada says here, the sense gratification. We are entangled in the material sense gratification. So there is this foundational principles. The first three verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, Janmadhyasya Yata. So I was hearing from His Holiness Romapada Swami Maharaj, my spiritual master. So he talks about the foundation. He takes an example. There is a building and there is something underneath it which we can't see it. That is called foundation. And there is a lot of stuff that goes into that foundation, which we don't even know what is that stuff. So similarly, there is this building on the top. We can only see that. We can only sense, we can touch, we can feel, we can experience it. So sense gratification is like that. We see things, we experience things, and we think this is what the truth. But as we know, this is relative truth, and there is something called absolute truth. So that is the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam talking about Param Satyam Dhimahi. Vyasdeva meditates on that Param Satyam, that is absolute truth. So it is just like a foundation. We can't see it. There is there. We know we are living on that building because we know the foundation is strong. If the foundation is not strong, then the building may collapse. So similarly, our sense gratification is also, or our perception of our enjoyment, what we think, which is true, is also lying on that absolute truth. Everything, behind everything, there is an absolute truth, which is a foundation, and that is Krishna, and that is Krishna. That is the absolute truth. So once we have the clear foundation in Krishna consciousness, like how we are talking about these relationships and who is absolute truth, who is Krishna, once we have the clear foundation, then that gives us or helps us in performing the uninterrupted devotion. Anyabhilashita Shunyam, that verse, that's the primary verse of Rupa Goswami. So that we can achieve it once we have this clear foundation. And how it is done, this is only possible by Guru. That is our true hope. He is our only hope. So Prabhupada says it is very difficult to get out of this entanglement and attain freedom. But if one is fortunate enough to get the association of a spiritual master, then he can be delivered from this ignorance. So it is not easy. It is one needs to be fortunate. Prabhupada says you need to be fortunate enough. And most of us are fortunate. We come into this category. But are we really using it? It's a different scenario altogether. So one needs to be very fortunate enough and to get the association, just to get the association itself. And association just not means, okay, we are seeing taking obeisances and living. That is itself is also so much benefit. But association here talks about the instructions, to listening to his instructions. So a spiritual master comes around, goes around, home programs, whatnot, and then he talks about something, and our association there means to be there, to be present in that association, and to hear from his instructions, to follow his instructions. So then we are fortunate enough that can deliver us from the ignorance. So this is only possible by spiritual master. through his instructions. And now one can argue, okay, there are scriptures also on the other side, right? One can read scriptures and then say, okay, I can get delivered, liberated, which may be true. But again, we are living in the age of Kali. How much we can understand, how much context we can apply, the time, place, and or it can this scriptures can state something which may not completely applicable in this age. So therefore, a guru is really important. It's very helpful. And there is this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam which talks about, which I'm sure we all know that. I just want to repeat that there is this human body which is compared to a boat, and there is this ocean which is compared to a material world or material ocean. And if you need to take this boat from one side to another side to cross that material ocean of nations, then we need a boat which we already got it, which is human life. And then someone need to drive that boat, which is spiritual master. He's the captain of the boat. So we got a very good captains. And he drives, and then there is another thing, which is the favorable breeze or the winds blowing to help the boat go in that direction. So that favorable winds is compared to the scriptures or Krishna's instructions in the form of Bhagavad Gita or whatnot. So when we all combine this together, then definitely it's kind of a this thing helps us to go from one side to another side. So that's what Prabhupada talks about here. He refers the word paragam. The paragam refers to one who can take the disciple to the other side. So on one side is conditioned life, the other side is life of freedom, which is eternal, full of bliss, spiritual world. And only spiritual master can take us, which is a captain of the boat. And we took this fortunate birth of a human life. And if you don't take advantage of this, then it's a waste of life. That's what Prabhupada talks in that purport of the analogy. So we need to take advantage of this life, the human body, and most importantly, if one got a spiritual master of his association, his instructions, it's very important. We spoke about that, and Prabhupada also brings out another interesting thing. It states very simple, but there's a profound meaning inside it. So he talks that we are suffering simply because of ignorance, as Devahuti mentioned, whether sense gratification or whatnot. So, but we are suffering, and that suffering is due to the sense gratification, or we can say it's ignorance. Interestingly, I was hearing from one of this Prabhupada disciples, Her Grace Sukhawa Mataji. She lives in New Vrindavan. So she talks about this concept of samsara. It's history repeating by itself. So let's take an example of suffering. Someone might went through some suffering in their previous, not previous life, even though that is subtle, but in this life, at some point in their life, let's say someone went through an accident and that trauma still lives, right? So that is a suffering. In the past, one may have suffered the pain, the experience, and everything. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to, even though the suffering has ended in the past, we are trying to carry that suffering into our future. So she says that the future determines our present. So for example, let's say tomorrow I have to go through some operation, surgery, uh, or even if you can take, or I'm going on a vacation. So even though you are, let's say I'm going on vacation, I'm vacation in next month or next day, next week. So even though I'm going through some challenges or there are some chores to be done, which I'm too lazy to do it, but reminding myself of, hey, tomorrow I'm going on a vacation, It gives me excitement and enthusiasm to finish my chores today, even though it is too much of chores, which another day I don't want to even touch them. So our future excitement is bringing or taking our present moment, that energy is bringing out. Similarly, if one is to go through a surgery next week, so what we are trying to do is our past pain of suffering through that accident or whatever the pain went through that surgery, we are trying to bring that suffering into our future. And as she mentioned, the future determines our present. So it is a cycle. We are trying to bring our past to our future, and our future is determining our present. So it's a samsara. That's what she mentions. She explained much better than what I'm trying to paraphrase it. So, but we are suffering, and it is eternal in this material world. So there are so many examples that we can think about like this. So, but how we can get out of this entanglement? Again, Prabhupada says, by the instruction of the spiritual master, the darkness of ignorance is removed, and thus the disciple is enabled to go to the side of freedom. Once we understand that, once we understand what Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj says, that essence, that triangle, once we understand these principles, at least theoretically, we can calm down ourselves, and then practically we can think the strategies how to uh, act in that situation. Finally, I would like to end with recently that I'm reading the first canto of the 13th chapter, where Dhritarashtra quits home. So surrendering to Guru or associating with Guru, as I was realizing that it's physical presence and also his vanis, that is his instructions. So surrendering to Guru means surrendering to instructions. It can mean differently in different scenarios, but primarily his instruction. For example, he says, okay, one is to chant. So now strategies can be different. One can chant on a different times of the day, different, the way the chanting goes, like the pace of chanting can be different, or someone wants to be really quiet, someone wants to take a japa walk. So it's the strategy is different, but Guru is not telling specific way to do it, but the principle is there that you need to chant. So we need to surrender to that instruction when we say we are surrendering to his instruction, but the strategies can vary depending on one's situation. Similarly, to get out of this sense enjoyment, also the same thing. It's this principle is, or the instruction is, to get away from that material attachment. Now the strategies can vary from person to person. Anyway, I think I digressed a little bit. So what I want to talk about, that Dhritarashtra quits home is a very good example, exemplified by Vidura. If you all know, in Mahabharata, Vidura has given instructions as a minister in the palace of King Dhritarashtra. So many times he advised him uh, not to take actions or not to take those decisions what he has taken, because he has a lot of attachment for his son Duryodhana. Uh, so he has given instructions. However, at that stage, Dhritarashtra did not listen. Uh, he's a very learned scholar. For every advice, Dhritarashtra reaches out to Vidura. So he is very scholar. He's not any other minister. And he only took his instructions, what is required for him, some of them for his ruling. Now, when Vidura left, during when he was insulted, he left the palace and he went on a pilgrimage. He met different holy places, and at the end he met Maitreya, and he came back to the same palace, to the same person, Dhritarashtra. He's talking the same things. Now, Vidura is not the same person anymore, because Dhritarashtra listened to him at that time. So now the circumstance changed. Of course, that needs to be there. But in case of Vidura, earlier he was the stage of Dhira. That's what Prabhupada talks about. And now after associating with the spiritual master like Maitreya Rishi, Maitreya Muni, he became a Narottama. He became a first-class man who is very intelligent in how to deal with these all kinds of situations. So therefore, when one gets associated with such a pure devotee or a spiritual master, then one can elevate oneself from a stage to a very higher stage. Like Prabhupada says, there are 3 classes of transcendentalists, Dhira, and then he talks about in that verse sannyasi, and then this Narottama. So one can be elevated to a higher stage when one gets the right association through spiritual masters. Well, I think I will stop here. It's 8:01. Please forgive me if I made any sort of mistakes. I'm really grateful to all of you, and especially my spiritual master and other pure devotees, and Srila Prabhupada. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namah. Open for any discussion. All right. Prabhu has mentioned, Lakshmikant Prabhu, he has to drop. So I will end the class. Thank you once again. We'll see you tomorrow again for the class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.